You're listening to the Not Just Numbers podcast, a conversation with mathematicians on their work and their lives to get to know them and discuss common biases and misconceptions.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the podcast Not Just Numbers. Together with me is Marcello.
Hi.
And myself, Anna de Bruijn. And the guests today are Ekin Özman.
Hi.
And Bart Besselink.
Hi.
Thank you for being here, first of all. It's nice to have you here in the studio. And let's dive into the first question, namely, who are you, Ekin?
Thank you for the invitation. My name is Ekin. I'm new here. I just moved to Groningen a few months ago. I've been working mostly in Turkey, Istanbul, and also in the States, United States, before I moved to the Netherlands. I work in number theory, arithmetic geometry, and I'm looking forward to learning more about this new country that I'm in and the new job that I have here.
Welcome in the Netherlands. And you, Bart?
My name is Bart. I'm associate professor in applied mathematics here at our institute. I've been here for a couple of years already. I've been here for 8 years now, and I very much enjoy it.
Thank you very much. This is also the first episode where there is a guest I don't know, so I would like to start with you, Ekin. And one question that we ask to all our guests is to explain what they do in a way that a 5-year-old can understand. Now, 5 years old is, don't take it literal, but just imagine somebody that has no high-level knowledge of mathematics and try to explain what you're doing to them.
Okay. I try to solve equations. So maybe when I say polynomial equations, that may make sense to most people. So equations in unknowns x, y, z, and maybe more variables. And the exponents are whole integers. And I try to find their solutions over rational numbers or other algebraic structures, more involved algebraic structures. Just numbers are not enough for these problems, so we use techniques coming from geometry. That's why the field is called arithmetic geometry sometimes. So we're doing arithmetic using geometric tools, and it's the intersection point of those two areas that I'm working on.
Oh, interesting. So Stefan, in the last episode, was talking about arithmetic geometry as well. So do you work in the same group together?
Yeah, exactly. We are both in the same group with Stefan in the algebra group.
And Bart, would you like to take the challenge?
It's quite a tough challenge, but I work on something called control theory. And control theory is a branch of applied mathematics that connects nicely to engineering. And control theory, in essence, deals with automation. The standard example is that of a cruise controller in a car. So a cruise controller is an automatic system that regulates the speed of a car. I basically work on the mathematical theory behind such engineering systems.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you very much. So quite similar in the sense that you all have to solve certain type of equation, quite different in the sense that one is more arithmetic and geometry getting together, and yours is more, sounds like mechanics analysis, maybe even geometry getting together, right?
That's one of the things that I like about my field, actually, is that it really spans from engineering to mathematics. So on the one hand, you can do very nice mathematics, linear algebra, functional analysis, complex analysis, operator theory. All these things come into play, but the high-level motivation is typically one from engineering. So you try to solve a real problem in some sense. And that's one of the things that I enjoy a lot.
I actually remember when I came to your office to mention if you would be our guest in the podcast last year, and then you said, but I'm an engineer, I'm not a mathematician. So now I want to ask you, do you feel more an engineer or a mathematician?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I never received a formal training as a mathematician. So I studied mechanical engineering, always did control theory there, and slowly but steadily moved to the more fundamental and more mathematical side of things. So can you really become a mathematician that way? No, so one of the things that has always appealed to me about this field of control theory is that it has very nice, solid mathematical foundations. And that's what I'm working on now.
So you didn't do a mathematical bachelor, right? You didn't study mathematics. But if you could choose again, would you choose mathematics?
Or would I choose? I have no regrets. I was one of these kids who liked engineering from the start. I was one of these kids who played with Lego and so on. One of the things that I've enjoyed about the mechanical engineering bachelor was, again, the breadth of different things. So got a little bit of anything ranging from thermodynamics to fluid flows to a tiny bit of material science to, well, control theory. That's what I'm doing now. And I don't think I would have wanted to miss that. I did learn, however, during this bachelor and also during the master that followed, that I was more attracted to the more rigorous, the more, well, let's say mathematically solid side of things. So, that's why I'm here, I guess.
Welcome to our side.
I actually like this a lot. When you mentioned I'm not a mathematician, I'm an engineer, my answer was, well, you are also a mathematician, so it doesn't really matter if you studied engineering or whatever you studied, right? It matters what you like and what you're doing. And I think there is a lot to learn from having people with different background working together and then using the mathematics in different ways. It's one of the part I like to see what people are doing also in other departments that is mathematics, even though they don't call themselves sometimes mathematician. And to steer a bit the conversation, Ekin, what was that drove you toward mathematics?
I don't have a traditional story. I'm not like the kids that liked math since the basic school, they call here, since the elementary school. On the contrary, like in elementary school, I didn't like it at all. But afterwards, I think I had great teachers in middle school and high school. And then I fell in love. I really wanted to study mathematics. But the structure of educational system in Turkey, where I grew up, is totally different than here. So you have to take an examination to enter the university. And like according to your points, you are placed into a department. And of course, the engineering departments have much higher points compared to the natural science departments. And I was kind of forced into choosing an engineering department. So I started off as an engineer as well. Yeah. But I started off as a computer engineer. And why computer engineering? Because I compared the schedules, the programs of the engineering departments, and I saw the most math courses were in the computer engineering department. So that's how I started. And then after a while, I started a minor program in math, then a double major program in math, then I switched completely. So it's step by step. And I mean, why I chose, because I always knew I was going to end up at doing something about mathematics. And I tried some internships in the industry as well. I felt that they were not good for me. I really loved being in academia. So my path was kind of clear. I mean, I kind of followed my heart.
But it sounded like it wasn't a straightforward one. So what were the main challenges besides the system that forced you into something else?
Well, convincing the people around me that this is the right thing for me. How did I accomplish this? I did not. I gave up convincing them at some point. And I did what I felt is good for me. And now they are all happy, the people around me. So the challenges were, of course, like, we start with this romantic feeling, or most of us, like, we love mathematics. Okay, we love what we do. That's right. That's how we start, or that's how I started, or most people that I know have started this. But at the end of the day, we want this to turn into our profession. So if you just do something out of love, it's not like it's like a hobby, right? So we have to make sure that we are doing this in a disciplined way. Like there might be days that we wake up and we don't feel like thinking about math that day. But if it's our profession, then we have to do it. It can be shorter, it can be lighter that day, but still it has to be a daily activity. So that was the main challenge, to turn something that I love into a profession. Other than that, trying to prove everybody that like this is the right thing for me was a challenge in the beginning, but after a while I did not care too much. So
why was it a challenge for people to accept that this was right for you, the mathematics?
It's a cultural thing, I think, because being an engineer is more valued, or if you get a certain point in that exams, you have to go the highest department that you can according to the points that you have. People think that as if it's a money, like if you have the right amount of money, why don't you do what you can do? So convincing that what you love is more important than what you can enter was the first challenge. But I don't think I overcame that challenge. Again, I ignored it.
Yeah, sure enough.
I did not convince people.
It's not the same thing. Oh, that's what you mean. As in, you didn't challenge it actively, but rather ignored the messages.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair enough. Did it meet your expectations, doing research within mathematics?
For me, yes. It exceeded my expectations. In fact, I didn't know I would have this much fun. Depends on when you ask me. Like if you had asked me when I was doing a bachelor's, of course, everything you would ask me, I would give you a very positive answer. But if you had asked me through the end of my PhD or middle of my PhD, that's a different story. PhD you can have really hard times during the PhD. But afterwards, I think I knew that those hard times would be over, and you have to just accept that when you're doing research, you have to accept that the moments of failure is much more common than the moments of success. And it's okay. It's okay. Being resilient is very important. You learn to enjoy those challenges, those failures as well. I had, in fact, this nice string during my PhD, which kind of saved my day. When I thought that I proved something, because sometimes you think you prove something and it's not true. But at the end of a hard day, if I think that I proved something nice, then I would stop there and I would just go to sleep because I want to have a, nice, calm sleep. Yeah. And in the morning, it may be wrong still, but that's fine.
At least you got to enjoy the evenings, right?
Exactly.
Oh, I do recognize this. Just from doing your bachelor or master thesis, this is already very recognizable for PhD students, even more so, I can imagine.
Can I go back to the previous discussion? Bart, how was it for you moving from engineering to mathematics? Was it a smooth transition, or do you also had pushbacks from the outside or obstacles on your way because you're not a trained mathematician? How dare you come to our institute? So things like that.
No, I never felt these type of obstacles. And also, I did not plan my career in a sense that I knew where I wanted to end up. For me, it was really one step at a time. So I finished my master's, I got the opportunity to do a PhD. I thought I would enjoy it, so I did a PhD. And then after my PhD, I had to make a decision on whether I wanted to go for a postdoc or go to industry. I explored different options. I talked to industry as well, but I got the chance to do a postdoc abroad, which I found very appealing. So I went for that. And then as a postdoc, for me, that's somehow where the most critical step in your in your career is, in the sense that that's the moment where you really need to decide whether you want to have a career in industry or academia. And I really enjoyed academia. I liked first of all, the content, the challenges, the math. I enjoy my field of control theory. I liked the people. At the moment of doing a postdoc, you really also develop a little bit more of an overview of the whole field. You get to know a little bit of people. You know how things work. So that's when I decided that I wanted to stay in academia. But then the biggest challenge is finding a job, and ultimately I was lucky to find a job here where I can say we have a very nice and very strong group in control theory. So I was very happy to become a part of that. Coming back to your question, I always did control theory, so I was always in this field. Still, coming to a mathematics institute was a bit scary in some sense initially, because I thought, okay, here you have all these very formally trained mathematicians who are going to, ask me difficult questions about the spaces in which your signals live and who knows what. But this turned out to be not the case at all. Of course, I already knew the people I would be working with directly, so I felt very, very welcome and very, very much supported. But in the end, also mathematicians turn out to be just people. So yeah, ultimately it turned out to be not scary at all.
That's good to hear. And it's also good that somehow at some point we realize that we are surrounded by people, which is, I guess, the whole point of this podcast as well. So thanks for bringing it up. I'm also curious to hear your experience with failure and stress at the end of the PhD, because seems to be something that accommodates many of us. I remember how stressed I was at my end of my PhD. I know how my students get stressed toward the end of the PhD, and now we also know it from Ekin, and I'm curious to know your experience.
You have to think a little bit. So I was very stressed for the defense, but not so much stressed about finishing the PhD itself. I was lucky to have very good supervisors, very good mentors, and I could really enjoy my PhD time. I felt a lot of freedom in doing the things I wanted to do. I could play around with these very interesting problems. And of course, there were many times where we were completely stuck, and or you had to throw away things that you've been working on for a month or 2 months. Yeah, that can be difficult, but you also somehow soon realize that this is part of doing research, and it is a very crucial part of doing research, because you need all this experience and all these, seemingly failures to build up the intuition and the experience to actually maybe prove something new or derive a new result. And yes, I had good mentors who always told me, okay, this is indeed how things go. Don't worry. And I think I had enough of a momentum of every now and then showing a nice little result to also keep feeling it, other than people just telling me that this is how things are supposed to go. This is also what I try now in supervising my own PhD students in, okay, first of all, this is how it goes, but also I think it is important to every now and then have this feeling, okay, this is really a small stepping stone. This is something that I have achieved. This is something that we can build on. Yeah.
So more on the personal side. What do you like to do in your free time, Ekin?
Oh, free time.
Yes.
Do I have free time? Well, I have 2 young kids, 4 and 9 years old. So, and I just moved here. So right now I really have no free time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But if I'm not dealing with the family or not doing something with them, I like reading. And I like walking around in the city, especially since now that I don't know the city very well. I like discovering new neighborhoods on foot.
Do you like to read fiction, non-fiction?
Mostly fiction, but anything can be interesting. Like, yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Have fun exploring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I've somehow similar hobbies. I think I like reading as well. I enjoy this. Besides that, I try to go out on my racing bicycle in the weekends. Right now the weather's not that good, but this is something I enjoy. I like swimming as well.
Do you already have a tux at home to place your racing bicycle in case bad weathers?
No, I'm not that well prepared for the upcoming winter. No.
Who knows? Who knows?
Well, if it stays like this, we're going to have like a winter
That's
when
true.
we can basically keep going to the beach, right?
Yeah.
I'm actually curious here before we move on, or maybe as a mean to move on with this episode. Today we want to talk about what it's like to do a career in mathematics and what is like our daily job as mathematician. But I would like to ask Anna, as a student, what do you think is like?
Oh, man. So I'm a master's student in my 2nd year. So from my long career as a student, I would say that in my experience, a lot of it is teaching, although this might not be true, and preparing lectures, preparing talks. You must prepare lectures, right? I can't imagine giving lectures out of the blue. Some time has to be spent on research, otherwise you're not a researcher, and there's of course teaching positions as well. And then there must also be some administration for the courses. If you're giving a course, managing the students, this page on Brightspace, managing the funding for your research. But I'm probably missing a lot. I can't see everything. So that's why this episode also exists.
Well, you already put a lot of things on the table, and I'm sure more will come. We should have probably asked a student from the first year and check what they say. It should have been some fun thing, like go around and ask, what do you think our professors are doing? Ekin and Bart, what do you think? How much are we missing and how much is there in the picture? And I'm also curious to hear how it's different from you, right? You, Ekin, just started, so you're probably figuring still out the balances here in Groningen, but you had plenty of experience from before.
Yeah. I think Anna told everything almost. I think when I was at her age or at her stage, I wouldn't be able to say that much. So I thought the professors were teaching and doing research, which is correct. But the other part that is not very obvious to students is the part that we call service or administration. You're right, in this, since I'm new here, I don't have that responsibility too much yet, although my committee membership is going to start in November. So, but I had a lot of service duties in my previous positions. So that's the part that is not very obvious to students, which is maybe good because I think that's the least fun part of our jobs, for me at least, because it's lots of meetings. Of course, it's related to the university, it's educational meetings or, meetings about deciding how do we do certain things, but it's not directly about mathematics. So that's why it's the least fun part for most of us. But it has to be done. And it has to be done by us because the university is a machinery that's run by us. So we need to be in charge of those things as well. That's how I think about these responsibilities. Like when I think about it this way, then they become less painful. I start to enjoy them more. Because if you don't have a voice in those subjects, then somebody else will, and that somebody else may not be on the same page with you. So it's not a waste of time. You have to contribute to those parts as well.
Although it might feel that way.
Yes, it might feel in that way, but that's why I keep saying these things to myself as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I very much recognize this. This is more about service to the university.
Exactly.
On top of this, there's also a lot of service to the research field, which also has many different aspects. It goes from reviewing papers from peers to organizing conferences, workshops, all these editorial tasks that come with it. This ultimately is also a large part of our job. Maybe you could also classify things like a membership of PhD committees and all these things into this. I think this is something that's also very much hidden for a lot of students.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about how much time it takes. Like if you add to this also sitting on grant panels, reviewing for grant panels, which are seriously important job. If you think the amount of money over which you have a decisional responsibility, it's just an insanely important job, and try to do it fairly and try to do it properly, right? And it's, on the one hand, it's so strange that as a student, I remember also when I was young, I had no clue about all this stuff. And if you think about the amount of time that you have to spend on it, it should be more, maybe more visible even, right? Yeah. Knowing that there is so much more that you're doing it, not that you're just there sitting on the chair and making it warm because you're thinking about this beautiful platonic universe, but there is so much practical stuff that you're actually having to do for things to run smoothly and to play a part and contribute for that run. And also, something that students may not realize yet, especially if they just started, is that how much students are involved with some of these tasks, because many of these panels actually have student members that play effectively an equal level role as to the HR or professor that are sitting there, be it an hiring committee, being program or curriculum committee, so the places where you evaluate and give feedback on how the teaching is going and how to improve courses, on how the curriculum is structured, on who to hire as the next person. I mean, this is a place where students actually have a say and have a responsibility. Very often they do not know about that.
Yeah, it's good to actually ask for students that are listening. Often we get these surveys after a course has finished or just before, how we experience the course and what could be improved. What kind of influence do students have on courses when they fill out these surveys?
Well, first, as a lecturer, I get to see these surveys, and they really help me to reflect on the course. And yeah, it tells me what went well, maybe things that didn't go so well. And I really use this to try to improve my course for the next year. On top of this as feedback to an individual lecturer, I believe it's also used in the curriculum committee. But I think Marcello knows much more about this than I do.
So in fact, it's the program committee where this comes to. And so what happened there is discussed between the lecturer sitting there and the student sitting there, where we discussed, okay, how do we interpret this feedback? What can we give as constructive suggestion for the future? Is everything going well? Is something that we can try to do differently? Is it worth doing differently? This is the way we can check how things are going and provide feedback on how it can be improved for the future. And most lecturers actually do work on this feedback. So it's crucial to get it. And very often students do not realize it, I think, because the response rate on these forms are remarkably low at times. But this is our way to understand how things are going and what can be improved. And more so, here I'm pledging students not just to fill the form, but to fill it responsibly. You are talking to a human. So remember that. There is no need to be nasty if something goes wrong. You can be critical and constructive and know that person is reading it. I mean, there is not that much point in hurting them for the sake of hurting them. And it happens. It's not something that happens just in Groningen. I've seen it happening basically everywhere I've worked. But it's useful feedback. It's an important feedback to know what can be improved or somehow what expectations have not been set right. Because sometimes it's not even about improving the course, it's about improving the communication with the students and the way we present things. And it should be done respectfully, both by us and I would expect the same kind of respect from the students. But it's really important. Please fill in these forms and please let your lecturer know in advance if something is not going well. Sometimes you can just fix it and change it from the beginning or from the middle of the course. You don't have to wait at the end.
And I can imagine, I mean, this has happened a lot, that individual students do need a lot of courage to come up to a lecturer and tell them some points of feedback. Is there a way to do this more safely in their minds?
I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I like the way Damash deals with this in the sense that he likes to make a big fuss of his mistake. If each time he makes a mistake in class, he said he takes a red chalk, makes a big red cross and show the student, look, I make mistakes as well. And it's not the end of the world, it's fine. I try to tell my student, just ask question. I'm happy with it, whatever the question is. But I understand there is a barrier. When we were talking to the other students, they were saying the moment they are TAs, students stop asking them questions because somehow they give a different power role. So I don't know what is in your way. What do you do to push for this? I find it hard. So I've not found a solution that I can say it works. Even with anonymous questions and anonymous feedback, I get the usual 20% of the student to respond, but not the others.
Yeah, this is a very difficult question. I don't really have the proper solution for this either, I think. I just try to be open also in the way how I approach the lectures. I also make mistakes. I point them out and sometimes ask the students, why didn't you tell me that I made a mistake? Just to also show that I'm open for feedback. Because I think this is, you said something very important, that we're also very willing to adapt how things are going throughout the course. And we don't have to wait for this final evaluation or this final questionnaire to receive this feedback. One other thing that I think also helps is that a lot of students find it easier or maybe it feels safer to talk to TAs. So I do keep in touch with the TAs for my course quite closely to also learn from what they have heard and the feedback that they have collected. So then maybe it goes over one more step, but I still like to collect this type of feedback.
Can I add something to this, actually? I've talked to some students in my year that have been TAs, and some of them admitted that if a student asks a lot of questions to them about, of course, the topic that they are studying at the moment, this can kind of imply a weakness depending on the stupidness of questions. And I would like to actually express that, also me being a TA, whatever questions are asked, depending on the level of them, it doesn't matter. This shouldn't imply that I view the student whom asked this question to me any less or any less skillful in this topic. Maybe this is the thing students are scared of.
I very much agree. I think I once heard this quote of someone saying, the worst question is the question you didn't ask. It sounds incredibly cheesy, but I think it's true. Asking questions about things you don't understand or things that are unclear, they show that you're willing to learn and that you're willing to understand and to improve. So to me, this is very, very valuable.
And I think asking a question is not showing that you know less. On the contrary, like if you can ask a question, that means that you gathered something out of it. I mean, most of the time, if somebody is confused to the point that they cannot ask even a question about it, that's the worst scenario, right? I mean, I always think if a student is asking a question, then they are following, they're understanding, they're in much better shape than most of the students who are not asking. And I always tell my students that, like, if you have a question in your mind, ask it right away. Don't ask it to your friend next to you. Ask it loudly in class, because most probably 99% of the time, that's also a question for somebody else in the class. So you're doing me a favor because I cannot know really what is the missing point or what's confusing for each of you. But if somebody asks, then I might answer it, and that may cover maybe 10% of the class. And then like somebody asks some other question, that 10 more percent. So that makes a much better classroom for all of us. And for the student feedback, I really value student feedback, and I think those questionnaires are extremely important if they are filled with responsibility. So according to my experience as well, the reply rate is very low, and either the students who love the class and the lecture replies, or the other end. So it's hard to get a valuable feedback if it's not filled by a decent amount of students in an honest way. I don't know. I don't have a perfect solution for that as well. But maybe one thing is, back in old times, we had these surveys in the paper form. I don't know if you guys know that, but and we were giving those papers at the end of the class on the last day or so, and then they were. I mean, we were leaving the classroom, and they were sitting there, the students, and they were forced kind of to fill in that survey. I know that's not fit for today's world, so that may not be a solution. But constant reminders to fill those in, or if they don't like those formal, because some questions in those standardized surveys may not be fit for your course. I try to prepare like 1 or 2 questions and then ask them informally through the methods that students like, mostly online.
So I don't know if this is at all practically possible, but for me as a student, often these surveys come around just before your exams or during your exams, somewhere in this period. And anything that you write down kind of vanishes in this black hole, and that is the survey. So if there's any feedback coming back to the students, like this is what we heard from you, we try to adapt this and this and this, just a very, very small summary on the feedback, this might help.
Now we are entering into the problem of local regulation, I would say, because some of these things are because of the way they are just regulated here. And I know some lecturers bring the feedback to the next class, say, this is the feedback that came last year and this is how we changed the course. Still, you that you gave the feedback will not hear about that. We are working on this. There is an active dialogue between program committees and the faculties, and how we can improve or change, even adjust these forms. And this also is not something that is just about Groningen. I'm sure this is happening all over the place. Somehow the university is a very slow changing beast. So things take forever, but they slowly morph and change and get better, I would say. I think it's a very important discussion what we have. And I would like to move it a tiny bit more from the issue of the feedback in class to let's embrace this discussion that we had over failure and the fact that you have to get used to failing and that you have to get used to the fact that sometimes your proof are not working, because this, I think, it's one of the things that underpins the way research moves on, right? You're working on something that you have maybe an informed idea of what it should be like. You have a vague idea of what could be the right ways to get there, and you are 100% sure that we'll get it wrong for 10 times or even 100 times before you get there, right? And this is kind of, I mean, a walk in the dark. That's what you expect. You bump into walls until you find the door, right? Is this similar to you, or it's just my experience?
No, it's definitely my experience too. Yeah, not just there's no light in the room. You don't know the room. It might be full of furniture, or it might be totally empty, and you sometimes don't know what you're trying to find as well. So it's a complete mystery. But I think you get better at this feeling as you get more experienced. The first time of failure might be devastating. You might think that, oh no, that's like, I'm not cut for this at all. If you're feeling that, you should know that that's totally normal, and maybe talking to somebody that's more experienced, to your mentor, to your advisor, will be helpful. But after a while, you learn that, okay, this is life. This is part of my job. It happens and it will be over. You just need to keep going. You just need to, it's like cycling. If you stop, you may fall. But if you keep going, then you will reach somewhere.
And what does then your routine with doing research is like? Is something you do on your own? Is something you do with other people, with your PhD students? Is something that you have to find time for instead of being able to know that you have so much time for research and just sit down and do it?
I think this is maybe another thing where students have the wrong impression. Students maybe have this feeling that we as professors, we spend, I don't know, half of our time on research, and it means that we sit behind a desk and we try to prove theorems. This is not how it works, at least not for me. For me, research really means collaboration with PhD students, which in fact means that it's the PhD students who do most of the actual research. And I view it as my task to supervise them, to motivate them, to bring ideas. And the part of the job that I enjoy most is exactly this. It's the weekly discussions that I have with PhD students in front of a whiteboard, talk about research, talk about mathematics, talk about the problems that we encounter in this research, possible ways forward. And yeah, so this is what research looks like for me. So I sometimes wish I had more time to actually sit down myself and try to prove something. Whenever I find some time, what I try to do is test some ideas that I have. Not to the extent that I can really show something or prove something, but to build some intuition or some confidence that some idea could possibly lead somewhere. And at such time, if I don't necessarily have really the time to work it out myself, I could bring it in one of the PhD projects, for example. Yeah, so this is how I try to organize things.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, as a student, this is also something I didn't know. Research nowadays, especially, I don't think it's done alone. I do have collaborators, and I love working with other mathematicians. That also keeps the discussion lively, and you don't feel alone. Like, it's whenever you are failing, it also happens to us as well, like when we're doing our research projects. There's somebody else there that you can talk to, you can think together. So my way of doing research is via collaborations, either with my students or with my colleagues. And the ideas usually come to me, at least, when I talk to people, not when I'm sitting by myself on the desk, which rarely happens, as you said, like, unfortunately, maybe. But I didn't know as a student, like, I would do this much talking to other people, and then that would also bring solutions.
And like the practical details of this, is this via Teams or Zoom or in real life, or a combination? How do you talk to your colleagues?
It's a combination. So it depends. I mean, of course, the technology is extremely helpful. I had collaborators whom I did not meet physically. We just met via Zoom, even the first time, and it worked out nicely. But that's not the common thing. The common thing is we usually get to know each other through a workshop, through a conference, a meeting, or maybe they are my friends from PhD, I don't know. And then you may not be able to meet frequently physically, but it starts with a physical meeting and then it continues online. And if you can get along with the person, both personally, I think it's also important, and mathematically, it works out somehow. You find a way.
Also because sometimes you get the best ideas not in the formal setting when you are in the office or in the class. Like if I think in mine, it's been cafeterias, pubs, hiking in the woods or in the mountains. I think all the best ideas have come from these three different places. Well, collaborations, I wouldn't say shower. I just say hiking, cafeterias and pubs. But this is the places where most of the best things have done, were born and have developed. And then, yes, I mean, especially the more you go on with the amount of extra duties and family and everything, it gets much harder to travel and then you have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I still struggle to just work with my PhD students. I find it very hard to give away my collaborations, and because I enjoy it so much. But then I realized that time is limited, so I'm more and more shifting as well into working with my PhD students as intermediaries for my collaboration, much more than working on the collaboration myself, because otherwise I'm basically dragging them and slowing them down instead. I think that's a bit of a pity, but then it's unavoidable, right? If you already just summing the things we have mentioned so far, this is just more than 40 hours a week, but way more than 40 hours a week if you want to do them properly.
Yes, that's true. That is, somehow a problem of this job. So you have to balance all these difficult or all these very different tasks. I enjoy most of them. I think I enjoy the vast majority of these tasks. Sometimes I wish that I had a little bit more time for each and every one of these tasks. So it's really a game of some of time management as well, where sometimes you have to accept that for a specific task, you're going to cut corners a little bit, maybe, to the point where everything is still acceptable and fine and no one will be angry at you. But sometimes deep down you feel, okay, I could have done a better job here if I had just had a little bit more time. And of course, there's a few things that are very important and where you want to do the best you can. And that's really in the core activities of research and teaching. But in all the things around it, sometimes you cannot give it the full, maybe 100% just because there's not enough time.
I think the three things that personally I found the hardest and the one that I basically learned by getting them wrong, learning to say no. I think this was probably the hardest thing because many of the things you're asked to do, indeed, they are interesting, they are exciting, they give you a chance to have a say on some matters in which you feel you have something to say. So it's very hard to say no. And it takes time to learn. The other thing, delegate. Sometimes you don't have to do something. Sometimes you can ask other people to help out. And that's also something at least myself, if I think about it, I felt like I was bothering them or I was wasting their time or maybe I felt I was in debt or something. But I mean, it's a shared load, right? So it's fine to say no. It's fine to ask people to help you out, especially with the administrative part and the things where we are all needed to move forward. And by now I've forgotten the third, but when it comes back, I will tell you. I don't know if this reflects with your experience as well.
Yeah, it definitely does. I like your cutting corners phrase. That inevitably happens. You try to choose what is the best course of action to take, if that's the case. But I think deep down we are all like are perfectionists and we want to do everything in the best way possible, which is not possible. So sometimes just doing is better than trying to do it perfectly and not doing it. And that's something you learn along the way. It's not like, I don't know if there's a training for that. You learn it by doing, you learn it by doing it wrongly. But I mean, even if we had like 80 hours in a week, that won't be enough for us. Because then we would find that, like, I could have done this better. So we have to find the point to stop. Like my PhD advisor had told me this once. I mean, especially like the time to balance when back in those times there was no administrative work. It was only balancing research and teaching. Good days. So he was telling me that like you can be a really good teacher and you can be an amazing teacher. If the amount of job you have to do in between these two is costing you half of your research time, then you shouldn't go for being an amazing teacher. Because at this moment, you have to finish your PhD. Like you have to get a good thesis, and that was a good advice. Like that's the moment where I learned. Okay, you cannot be perfect at everything. You have to find the balance.
This actually was the third thing I want to say.
Oh, really?
Decide what are your priorities.
Exactly.
Right. At some point. This was one of the big differences I felt between industry and academia. In industry, my manager was discussing with me, these are the priorities of the companies, these are your priorities of growth, and this is the middle ground. And if something goes off or the time is not enough, we can discuss together so that we can rebalance the time properly. And here, nobody is doing that for you. Mm-hmm. And so it feels like, especially when you read the way you are evaluated, that you have to be perfect in everything and you have to do everything. And to some extent, it's true that there is this expectation, but then, it's your life. And something I was listening to a podcast a few days ago is that at some point you can do everything you want as long as you are ready to deal with the consequences. And so at some point you have a choice in what do you think is more important. And then you can rebalance what you're doing and then what you're saying in that. And this is something that nobody has taught me. Even all these administrative courses on leadership and time management and whatnot, I think this is something I missed and I had to learn, as you were saying, by making mistakes. And also the other things that you both said, it's fine to not be perfect and it's fine to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We all think that as soon as we make a mistake, it's going to be a disaster. Everybody will judge us for that. And then you realize that nobody cared that you made that mistake.
No.
I always remind myself that I'm not a medical doctor because, that might be a really bad example. If they make a mistake, like, that's really bad. If I make a mistake, what's the worst thing? I may prove a wrong theorem. Okay, so what? It's bad, but, it's not a life-threatening
That's not
issue.
Too encouraging for any medical doctors listening.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm just...
No, that's fine.
They can find some other example for themselves. Maybe. I don't know.
Of course.
But I think this is where we can lead by example for our students. We need to let them know, just embrace your mistakes and use them to learn, right? This is the whole point of what they are doing. So if you are scared of showing us where you get stuck or where you made mistakes, you're not learning in the same way that our scare of not showing up where we are failing and where we are making mistakes was preventing us to learn in the first place. So I think go ask questions, make mistakes, it's fine. That's what I'm trying to say.
I love the phrase, it's like fruitful mistake. Because, if you don't make a mistake, that means you're not doing anything. You cannot do everything right, especially if you're just learning. So if you are not making mistakes, if you're not asking wrong questions, then this means you're not doing anything, maybe. You have to ask yourself, what am I doing? Do I really understand everything going on here, which is kind of unlikely? Mm-hmm. Or maybe I'm not asking questions because I'm scared. What's going on? Asking questions and making mistakes is the most important thing to learn something, I think.
There have been a few lectures, and the most valuable thing they could have said to me certainly was the phrase, I don't judge you for how you feel or if you fail, if you make mistakes. If you ask stupid questions, I won't judge you. Just make them and ask these questions. It leaves me some leeway to go and learn. If you feel stupid, most students here aren't stupid, but they might feel stupid. This is a very common thing when you study mathematics. Admitting you're stupid, well, of course this isn't true, but admitting this feeling can help enormously.
But I mean, talking about feeling stupid, I don't know what's your experience, but if I go to a conference or if I go to our seminars, if you're not talking about things I work on or I've worked on, there is a very, 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 very good chance, in fact, it's almost sure, that I will not understand most of the things you're going to say because I just don't know about them. And it feels like I'm an idiot because I don't understand anything and you understand it so well.
Yeah.
Right? But this is part of it. You cannot be expert of everything.
Of course.
So we are all in the same boat there, right? You are in class, you don't understand what I'm saying. It's not you. It's, first of all, I might not have done a good job. And second, we are figuring it out now. So this now is the time to ask questions and get to it. Otherwise, we will never understand it.
Yeah, I very much recognize this. Also, when going to conferences, there's many talks that I just don't understand. But you get used to this and you develop a kind of confidence in the sense that, okay, I don't understand, but maybe it's not just me. Maybe it's also the sender who could have done a slightly better job in making this accessible to a broader audience. And this is something that I also found valuable when trying to prepare a course myself. So, of course, I know the subject that I'm teaching, so I could tell everything I know about it. But yeah, I think that the challenge for us is to try to present this in such a way that it connects to the level of the students, not to the level at which I have to understand this very specific, detailed thing.
Yeah, so for the listeners, Bart was a lecturer of mine for his course Linear Systems. Ekin hasn't been yet. Maybe in the future, maybe not. But anyway, I can say with confidence that Bart is one of the best lecturers I've had so far. So I think you do well in this aspect that you mentioned.
Oh, well,
so
thank you.
For that. I think I should mention this. So going back to your busy schedules, from the perspective of student, it can be hard to email you. And I was wondering, how many emails do you get per week on average, of course?
I've never counted. It depends on the week, it depends on the day. But I don't think students should feel scared or they should feel hesitant to send emails, because emails are the safest way of communication. Like if I get an email and if I don't have time at that moment to answer it, I can answer it like later. I never get mad, especially to a student, because I got an email from them. To the contrary, to be honest, I wish all my emails were coming from students. Yeah. Most of the annoying emails are not from them.
No, I agree. So we're complaining a lot about our workload and the many different things that we have to do. Maybe it is important to say that to a very large degree, we do this to ourselves.
Right.
We say yes to maybe just a few too many things. We really want to organize this workshop. We want to write a paper on this topic. And that's, of course, also brings the motivation to keep this up somehow.
Yeah, I agree. It's mostly our doing the amount of things we do, but I think it's a bit of the two. It's that there are lots of demands from the university. We are not good at prioritizing. We are not good at saying no, and sometimes because we enjoy doing things, right? And there are two things that we have not yet discussed that I was noting down because I wanted to hear what's your experience with that. We are at a point in which it's crucial that we are able to get funding from our research. Okay. And we are at a point in which societal relevance is more and more and more one of the criteria of evaluating us and our research. And then, we can argue what it means, societal relevance. So I don't know what is your interpretation of this. For me, it's not that what I'm doing is a direct application. It's more that what I'm doing is somehow shared back with people in a way that they can relate with what is going on and perhaps with how this thing is related or unrelated to their life, but where the interest that I have lies. But the real question then is how much time actually doing public engagement and how much time looking for funds takes on your schedule, and how much is this recognized? Like looking for funds means also writing a lot of complex research proposals that are most likely not granted, not because they are bad, but because it's simply insanely competitive. So the success rate is about, let's say in average, depending on the different grants that are there, about 10%, but this is like an optimistic number.
Yeah. So yeah, you when you write a grant proposal, you start by the assumption that it won't be awarded. so it's might be hard to get started, but the thing I tell to motivate myself is that I'm writing this mostly for myself. It's a way to organize my thoughts, because we've been discussing how busy we are. So there's rarely, I never find time if I don't have a reason to sit down and write down what's my next project properly. I might be thinking about it, I might be taking notes over and there, but I'm not writing a full proposal unless there's a reason for that. So I take those applications as an opportunity to organize my thoughts. And that helps. That grant won't be awarded. So what? I still have that project. I will still do it. I might try the same proposal in some other grant application, or I may not. I may just do it. But if I don't organize those thoughts well in advance, then they will never be done. I will never get started on that project. And about the outreach, it's a tough subject, because for me, I do it because I love doing it. Is it recognized? Sometimes not. But because I do it out of love, I don't mind the time I spend on that. Of course, you have to balance, again. And there are types of outreach. Of course, going to an open day and talking to high school students is the most common example. But I think stuff like this may also be counted as outreach. You might be a member of a committee, an international committee that is trying to make math popular or trying to help minority groups in math. You're not on the scene, you're not on the stage, but you are doing things behind the curtains. So, and that's also very important, and that's even harder to get recognized. But somebody should do it, and if you have time, energy, and willingness to do it, then you should do it.
So going back to the grant proposals, how many of them get accepted out of the, X many that you write?
It really depends. From until when I should count.
Yeah.
Okay, let me answer like this. I try to have a grant given a time. Right now, I don't have any because I just arrived. But usually, they are for 2 or 3 years. So before or as soon as the one ends, the previous one ends, I try to have another one. But I don't know how many I write. It depends on the opportunities I encounter. I can definitely say that more than half of it may be rejected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this the same for you? I'm not sure if you're in this...
Yeah. So, okay, maybe I didn't write enough myself to really keep track of the statistics, but this number of 10% that Marcello mentions overall is... Yeah, I think that's roughly the number.
10%. Oh.
Yeah, so you know from the start that you're writing a lottery ticket, essentially. And there's only so much influence that you have on it. Of course, you have to write a very good proposal, but there will be many people and many good proposals. So there is really a big element of luck in there. And somehow knowing this also helps a little bit in accepting the outcome of this. I do agree with you that it is really helpful to think about the research that you want to do, to organize your thoughts, but organizing the thought in the specific format that this funding agency that is not always the most
no, that's for sure
the most helpful part. Yeah, so it is something that takes a lot of time. So actually the last year I've spent a lot of time writing 2 big grant proposals. I have to wait and see what comes out. I would be incredibly happy if one of them would work, but even chances for this are small. But we'll see. I remember we were talking about outreach, indeed. Yes. And for me, another aspect of outreach is collaboration with industry. So some of the work that I do is in collaboration with people from the engineering department, and we connect this to some industry, where we try to apply the mathematics that we develop in control theory to their engineering problems. And this is something that is very interesting on the one hand, because you really get to see where the math that you use or develop gets applied. It's also a very direct way of getting feedback to the things that you do. People don't necessarily care whether a theorem holds or not, as long as it works, and it works better than what they had. So that for me is a very interesting way of a very interesting reality check in some sense.
That's great. For your field, it's of course possible to do this outreach within companies. Is this also true for you, Ekin?
Outreach in companies. Maybe through you it will happen.
Yeah, and I'm currently doing my master thesis with TNO in the form of an internship, and you're my supervisor for the master thesis.
Yeah.
So maybe that way, via the elliptic curve cryptography.
Yeah, it will be my first too. Like even though like I'm doing pure math, and I know it has applications to industry. I've done research on crypto as well, but I've never really actually collaborated with anybody from industry. So I'm looking forward to it.
Great, that's great.
So you can hear here that there are a lot of possibilities, and it doesn't matter how abstract and how inapplicable you think is the mathematics you're doing. You might be surprised about where it can pop up. I actually have a curiosity that I want to ask you. So what are your days at the university like?
Oh, it really depends.
All the day.
Every day is different. Of course, there's a lot of recurring things like meeting with PhD students, teaching. But somehow the one thing that keeps surprising me is that every week there's something different that somehow does not fit into the list of tasks that you had thought you had. I'm in a podcast now, suddenly. But I don't know, there was a degree ceremony last week, which is very, very nice. But it's not one of these things that you tend to think of. There was a small conference 2 weeks ago. I'm in a PhD committee soon. Almost every week there's one of these things. And that somehow keeps surprising me.
It's never the same. That's true. There is always something that you say, okay, this is something new for this week. I can relate with that very well.
Yeah, that's why I think we never get bored. Like there's always something new. It's not like you do the same thing, not every day, not every week. Of course, there are routines, like the time of your class is always the same, at least for that quarter. But there's always something surprising, as you said, exciting for that week. And that's one of the parts that I love about my job, in fact.
And how much time does it take to you to prepare courses?
Oh, it depends. I mean, if it's a new course or not, even if it's not a new course, if the student body is different. On average, if it's not something that I've been teaching like 5th time in a row to the same student body, then for every hour, I might be preparing 2 to 3 hours.
So for a 2-hour lecture, lecturers prepare.
Yeah, because you have to count the time that you prepare for the tutorial, the questions that you want to assign to students, like the homework problems, possible exam questions, all that stuff, like writing lecture notes.
Deciding what to teach.
Exactly. that's what you should start with. Yeah, you're right.
Where do you leave all these hours? I mean, it's unbelievable to me as a student hearing all these tasks to place them in a nice calendar 40-hour work week. This can't be, right?
Yeah, you learn along the way. I mean, okay. I was the same when I was a student. I would think that I would never be able to find the time.
Yes.
But you learn along the way. I mean, the time that you spend on doing some stuff becomes automatic. It takes less time compared to when you're a student. And the time is never enough, and you just accept that.
Mm-hmm. You learn along the way.
Yeah, that's right.
You also rebalance it a bit, right? So if block I'm teaching, I'm surely doing less of many other things, and I have to pick them up later. So usually the research that is more demanding in terms of time, the one where I have to sit down and when I need really this 3, 4, 5 hours straight to even understand what I'm doing, this won't happen in the blocks I'm teaching. It's just impossible to fit in the amount of time and the mental energy to do that. And then sometimes what you learn is that you adjust. Like if there are some tasks that are demanding, for example, after lectures, I'm usually tired, so I cannot do research after a lecture. But I can answer administrative emails, I can do planning. So there are things that I know I can do when I'm low energy, and there are things that I know I need high energy, and then I readjust my schedule on that. And then when there are things that happen in the middle of them, then you just say, okay, next week. That's life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I recognize that. I think for teaching, it very much depends on whether you teach a course for the first time or whether it's a repetitive course. So the first time you teach a new course, it takes an enormous amount of time. I think, to me, much more than the 3 hours for every hours of lecturing. But so for a course that I've lectured a few times in a row, I have my own notes. I have lecture notes and things prepared. So preparing the lectures themselves does not take me much time anymore. I typically just go over my notes the evening before the lecture. But of course, there's still the homeworks, the exam, and all this adds up. Yeah, and okay, maybe we now get the feeling that we're all these superhumans that manage to balance all these tasks. I don't think this is true. I also sometimes procrastinate. I don't know, I check the news and get stuck in a Wikipedia loop where I think, oh, this is interesting. I think it happens to all of us.
Yeah. I mean, if you're tired and if you don't want to accept it, your body won't listen to you, and it will happen. Like I especially find myself in this procrastination situation. If I've worked a lot, my brain is tired, it needs a break, but I don't accept it. I have still various things to do. But your brain needs the break. It doesn't listen to you.
So you have this too? I thought you were these superhumans always working.
No, but I like this Marcello's trick. Like after teaching, I'm on the contrary. My adrenaline is up. I'm really high in some sense. So, but I cannot sit down and do research, for example, because I'm too high for that. So I try to do stuff that needs high energy but doesn't need too much concentration. Things like this, you find a way for yourself, what works for you.
Also, sometimes you find people that they do everything possible and you don't realize what you're doing. And then you ask them and then you realize that you're doing the same thing. You say, oh, bummer. I thought I could find a new trick there.
Yeah, is it possible to be more productive? No, actually, I have the same issue. Yeah.
I think we only show our productive side. We don't really. It's like with the failure. You always see everything that works. You hardly see the things that have failed, the things that we did bad, the thing that did not work, the thing that we messed up, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So we are heading to the end of the episode. There is one thing that I'm curious to hear from you, especially since many of our listeners are students thinking of embarking in studying mathematics or already studying mathematics. Some of them are even more advanced with their careers. I think this podcast and its small niche has already proven that there is not a precise path on how you become a mathematician. There are, at least we have seen 25 different ways of becoming a mathematician, to each their own. So I'm not sure if there is the typical career path to become a mathematician, but I think it's interesting, especially for some of our students, to know what is like, and at least what are the milestones that you expect along the way to see. Just knowing that it's not going to be linear, knowing that life will dictate their own way and they don't have to fixate on a perfect career path. Mm-hmm. But what does a career path look like and what kind of stepping stone should it entail?
So you first get your PhD. That's the first, definitely. And then nowadays, a postdoc, or maybe two, depending on your field and the duration of the postdoc and what you accomplish during those times, is definitely needed. And I really value the time of the postdoc period because it's the time where you are fresh out of your PhD, you have all these great ideas about your own research topic, and you don't have the full responsibility of a professor yet. So you are teaching, yes, that's good, you have to get experience on that, but you don't have, in most of the places at least, the administrative tasks. So you are doing your two main jobs, research and teaching, and that's, training as well. And after the postdoc period, the really stressful part of getting a tenure track position starts. When you end up at some place, you may like it, hopefully, and you can finish your career there. You can get retired from that department, or you may want to change again. It's not the end of the world. I changed my path. I got my PhD from the States. I did a postdoc in the States and a postdoc in Europe. And then I moved back to Turkey, which I always wanted to do. I grew up there. And then after living 10 years there, because of various reasons, we decided to move again. And that move changed things in my career. That's right. But that's okay. I mean, that's life. There's not a unique path. And as long as you're doing what you like, then you should be happy.
My path was, also somehow followed this same structure of first doing a PhD, then a postdoc. I did one postdoc, but it was a long one. It was almost 4 years. And I knew that I wanted to stay in academia, but not at any cost. So I really wanted to get back to the Netherlands because this is where I'm from. So I was very lucky ultimately to get a position here. So in that sense, I did not have too many steps, but yeah, they did follow the same structure.
And so where in the process are you both? Ekin, you said that you have your tenure or not yet? I mean, can I ask about this?
I have my tenure,
yes.
But I'm an assistant professor. The title is that.
And you?
Yeah, I'm associate professor.
What's the difference?
The name.
Yeah.
Wow. There's, I think, in terms of specific job that you do, there's maybe not too much of a difference. So the Groningen system is such that as an associate professor, you can act as the first promoter, so let's say the formal supervisor of your PhD students. And this for me is the most valuable thing of being an associate professor. My path here in Groningen was maybe not the standard one in the sense that I first had a temporary contract, then moved into the tenure track system. But because I had this temporary contract already, I immediately got let's say, permanent job as an assistant professor. So I was lucky in that sense. I think now things have also changed a little bit, whereas previously getting a permanent job, getting tenure was connected to being promoted to associate professor or not. It is no longer, where you can actually get a permanent position a bit earlier in your career. And I think that this is a very good development.
Yeah, I think we were the last or the one before the last that got promotion tied to the associate professorship. And it's also to say that this is really wildly varying depending where you are. Like in England or in France, if you can get the effective equivalent of an assistant professor, which is the lecturer or the method conference, you would be permanent already. And then you can try to do your career. In that case, I think in England you have kind of two stages like here. So you get from lecturer to senior lecturer or reader, and then you go to full professor. In France, you need to get the habilitation, and then you can apply to become a professor. And in that case, I think it's similar to here. You get a much stronger shift toward management. So I think with the career moving on, you had, depending on the country, but you get a bit more teaching, a bit more administration, more management, and less research. So this is kind of what it looks like. I know many people that decided that they didn't want to take the career step because they didn't want to give up some of the research or teaching time to get the management or administration time. So this is also about, depends on the people. It might be that you do it for the prestige. It might be that you do it because you want to have a say to a certain type of committees. It depends. There might be different reasons why you want to do a step or another. There are people that decide to leave academia later on in their career, people that do it early, people that come back. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A bit of everything can happen. You need the good mix of being good at what you're doing, having luck, lots of luck, the right positions opening at the right time, and sometimes the will to move. I think I know very few people that were able to do the full career staying always in the same place or in the same country even, which it's annoying, but for something is understandable. I think the only way you can evolve your system and make it even grow is by looking at how things are done differently. So I think this is where diversity really helps. It grows your environment, and that's also one more reason to strive for diversity in the academic environment.
In your future research, I can imagine, if you have connections all over the world, places you've worked, certainly this could possibly help also in research.
Definitely.
I fully agree. For me, doing a postdoc abroad was very rewarding, both on a personal and professional level. And now going to a conference in our field, I meet all these old friends again. Yeah. So even that is very nice.
Yeah, that's always nice. I agree. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
for coming here.
Thank you.
And this marks the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening.
And if you liked the episode, remember to share it with your friends.